Good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we're rising out of the ashes together. Our topic on tonight is how children are shaped by domestic violence. We have with us our guest co-host, Jennifer Peterkin, and we have with us our guest for the evening, Minister Pam Baldwin of Top Ministries. Listeners, if you have questions or comments for our guest or co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. Or if you have personal resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level, from your country, your community, your local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Jennifer, if you would greet our listeners on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here. It is just a pleasure to have you, and so awesome that this resonates with so many people. I have been on Suffering in Silence as one of the co-hosts since the beginning. Tia and I are advocates together. I am a survivor and advocate of domestic violence. And right now, my current project that was born out of my advocacy is called The Human Experience. It is a podcast that I'm launching in January of 2023. And it's about stories and, how we are the product of what we experience in our lives and what we go through. So if you want to tune into that, give me a follow over on Instagram at GetTheHX.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that, Minister Pam, would you please introduce yourself to Luv Bay?
Good evening, Luv Bay family. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Pam Baldwin, and I attend Top Ministries Church. I am a kindergarten teacher, and I've been in education. I've been teaching kindergarten since 2019. But I've always been involved with children on different levels, different ages, Sunday school programs, teaching our teens. We had a bridge program, so I was involved in that. Taught pre-K for like 8 years. So my life is surrounded by children. I have 4 children of my own, grown folk, and I am a grandmother of 1. So I'm constantly surrounded by little people, and I absolutely love them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Luv Bay, again, Top Ministries is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Sunday services are held in the Marriott on City Line Avenue, Presidential Boulevard at 11 a.m. You can also find Top Ministries on Facebook and YouTube. Search for Top Ministries Philadelphia, and you should be able to find the ministry that way.
Yes.
We want to start, as usual, sharing some resources. First, we have in Australia the National Family Violence Counseling Service. Their website is www.1800respect.org.au. The phone number is also 1-800-737-732. In the UK, we have the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. Their website is www.nationaldahelpline.org.uk. Their phone number is 0808-2000-247. Or you can visit Women's Aid, AID. Their website is www.womensaid.org.uk. And then we have the Befrienders Volunteer Action to Prevent Suicide. You can find a helpline by country if you visit their website, www.befrienders.org. And again, listeners, if you send resources to us, we will share the information. We do our best to locate resources and share that information, but Luv Bay reaches over 110 countries. We can't find resources for over 110 countries without your help. So if you send the information to us, we will absolutely, definitely share it. So again, our topic on tonight is how children are shaped by domestic violence. I want to start by sharing an article, and I believe this article covers everything that will be encompassed on tonight. The article is titled How Witnessing Domestic Violence Affects Children. It is written by Elizabeth Plumtree. This was published November 17th, 2021, and it was medically reviewed by Anne Louise T. Lockhart, PSYD, ABPP. And this article is from verywellmind.com. So for victims of domestic violence, the physical attacks, emotional maltreatment, and other abuse endured are certain to take a toll on well-being. However, while the horrors of abuse are apparent in primary victims, children who witness the abuse of their mothers, fathers, or other family members are impacted. This article will look into the lasting psychological and physical effects of a child's exposure to domestic violence. To reduce the risk of these effects, it is also important to highlight ways that children can be protected from harm's way. If you or a loved one are a victim of domestic violence, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 for confidential assistance from trained advocates. And the National Domestic Violence Hotline is in the United States. How witnessing domestic violence affects children. As an all too common occurrence across the country, domestic violence is an uncomfortable feature of many American homes. An estimated 10 million people are affected by incidents of domestic abuse annually, a number that widens when silent victims like children are considered. In 2010, 1 in 15 children were exposed to cases of intimate partner violence, with a worrying 1 in 3 children also experiencing acts of violence. The effects of domestic abuse on children may be apparent within a short period of time, while other damages may be noticed in the long run. Some of the immediate effects that children experience after witnessing domestic violence are discussed in this article. Anxiety. Children are likely to remain on edge if they are always surrounded by the abuse of one parent by the other. These children will live in bated breath for the next time physical or verbal assault might take place in their home. This can breed a state of perpetual anxiety. For preschoolers who witness this, it isn't uncommon to revert to the habits of younger children. Thumb sucking, bedwetting, increased crying, and whining may result from observing abuse. School-age children can develop antisocial traits and may struggle with guilt over the abuse witnessed. These children typically take on the blame for the abuse their parents deals with, a belief that can strongly bruise their self-esteem. Post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the most devastating effects of domestic violence is its ability to cause post-traumatic stress disorder in children that are raised around it. Despite being spared from physical abuse, the trauma of domestic violence is enough to cause dangerous changes in the developing brains of children. These changes may cause nightmares, changes in sleep patterns, anger, irritability, difficulty concentrating, and children may sometimes have the ability to reenact aspects of the traumatizing abuse observed. Mental health strains are a common result of witnessing the abuse of a parent. However, these consequences may sometimes be apparent in their physical well-being. School-age children may report headaches and stomach pains, which are traceable to the tense situation back at home. In infants, there is a higher risk of experiencing physical injury following the constant stream of abuse on a parent. When teenagers witness domestic abuse, they tend to act out in reaction to the situation. They may fight, skip school, engage in risky sexual activities, or dabble in drugs and alcohol. These teenagers are also very likely to get in trouble with the law. In many instances, children that live in abusive households are likely to fall victim to this treatment themselves. An abusive partner can very easily become an abusive parent or guardian, physically, verbally, and emotionally harming their children. Long-term consequences of witnessing domestic violence. As helpful as distance might be, simply moving away from domestic violence isn't enough to undo the damage caused by witnessing it. Children that grew up watching a parent experience abuse are likely to deal with effects that last well into adulthood. Some of the long-term effects that children experience after witnessing domestic violence are addressed. Depression. The anxious child raised in a toxic, abusive environment may grow to become a depressed adult. The trauma of routinely witnessing domestic violence places children at a high risk of developing depression, sadness, concentration issues, and other symptoms of depression into adulthood. Health problems. A poor diet or environmental risk may not always be the primary causes of conditions like heart disease, obesity, and diabetes in adulthood. In some cases, these illnesses have direct links to the physical, emotional, and verbal abuse a child witnesses or is subjected to. Repeating abusive patterns. While abusive behavior can be repetitive, it's important to note that abuse does not always occur in a cyclical pattern. In fact, assuming that violence occurs in cycles can lead to victim blaming. Abuse can be unpredictable, and it is never okay. Feeling the pain and anguish of witnessing violence doesn't always guarantee that children will toe a different path. In some cases, early exposure to abuse simply sets the stage for children to walk that same line in adulthood. In these cases, male children might physically abuse their partners after watching their fathers do the same. Likewise, women from homes that witness domestic violence are more likely to be sexually assaulted by their partners in adulthood. Protecting children from domestic abuse. Knowing that domestic violence can have lasting effects on the physical, mental, and later life of children, it's important to properly shield them from abuse. The following are ways to protect a child from domestic abuse. Make safety a priority. One of the best ways to protect the interest and well-being of a child is for victims to receive the necessary support they need to leave the abusive environment. By doing this, children are spared further exposure to violence and are given a chance to grow up within healthier structures. Teach children healthy relationship dynamics. With a skewed view about romantic dynamics, talking to children about healthier interactions between partners can help to manage the damage caused after witnessing domestic violence. Children should be taught healthy ways to resolve disputes in friendships. It's important that they learn wholesome ways that partners can relate with each other, taking care to show why violence has no place in relationships. Educating children about boundaries. An effective way to manage the damage and prevent a cycle of domestic violence is to teach children healthy boundaries. Teaching children about autonomy, that no one else has a right to touch their bodies or vice versa, is a step in the right direction. Children should also be taught to always tell a trusted adult if another person is making them uncomfortable in any way. Domestic violence has the potential to leave lasting marks on direct and indirect victims, with psychological challenges like anxiety and depression likely to develop from domestic violence. Receiving appropriate care from a mental health professional can help to manage these effects in children. Therapy can also help with navigating the emotional strain and trauma of living in a toxic environment. And again, this article is titled How Witnessing Domestic Violence Affects Children. It is written by Elizabeth Plumtree, published November 17th, 2021. And the website where I found this information is verywellmind.com. with that, Minister Pam, with this information that was shared, I would ask that we start, with you just sharing a bit more of your experience with working with children.
Especially, kindergarten, they're young, and so their ability to express themselves when they're undergoing any form of duress is limited. And so they resort to acting out because they don't have the words to give you, or they're too afraid to tell you exactly what is going on with them. It just so happened that we recently had an experience with one of my kindergartners. The mother did, because we were noticing certain behaviors in class. And when we shared that information with the mom, she did open up and share that there were some situations going on at home. Mm-hmm. So, having said that, we immediately put our community pieces in place to surround him and to surround the mom, so that, we can help him navigate through what it was that he was dealing with, and also provide resources to the mom as well. So what we were seeing in actuality was the aggression in his play, the lack of focus in class. We saw him reverting to baby-like stage type of responses. So a lot of those things that you just mentioned in the article, or a few of those things that you mentioned in the article, we did actually see manifest in this little person. On our campus, we're really blessed because we have a component that is integrated in our curriculum, social emotional learning. So we have a teacher who comes, and we go from kindergarten to 8th grade, and she goes to each grade with grade appropriate lessons to help the students work through different types of social issues, different kind of emotional issues. How do we resolve those things? So we were able to connect my little friend with her and the mom as well, and to help bring some resolution or give them some alternatives to help him work through what he was dealing with.
So, in a lot of ways, teachers such as yourself, you really become responsible for the children in your classroom, when they're dealing with domestic violence at home, like when they get to school, or when they get to daycare or summer camp, whatever it may be. So I could just imagine, you get up to go to work, you're a kindergarten teacher, but there's some issues that come into the classroom that I would think that no one is prepared for in that way. You don't think, first thing comes to your mind, I'm going to have to help a 5-year-old through some trauma. Mm-hmm. I could just, and to have a whole classroom full of little people, I could just imagine, what it's like on that level. But as I was reading through this article, and Jen, feel free to jump in, but I knew when I read about the boundaries are like, yeah, that's going to catch Jen's ear. I know that, the boundary part. But when I was reading through, and so Minister Pam, when you were saying some of the things you noticed, like aggressive behavior in play, when I was reading this, what caught my attention was the issue of post-traumatic disorder, that children may sometimes have the ability to reenact what they've seen. And that is so true, because reading this, I can just, in my mind, I can clearly just think back on things that I have seen children do, but again, thinking back to my own childhood, things that I did, things that other children did around me, we weren't playing. We really were reenacting the things that we saw, the things that happened, the things that were, around us. And so many adults brushed it off, didn't pay us any mind, didn't pay any attention to it, because they chalked it up and they said, that's just rough play. They didn't use terms like aggressive behavior. No, that's just rough play. You're playing too rough. Stop. But it's very interesting if you're mindful, which I believe we all need to be when we're dealing with children, any age. So if you're talking about the very baby of babies, or when you get to teenagers in high school, we really need to pay attention to the things that they say, the things that they do. And even when they're quiet, even when they're, moving in a manner that's, the typical teenager is not going to sit for hours at a time saying nothing. So just to have that compassion and just that, I think that wherewithal, and even just to care, just exactly. I think that's when, as adults, we have to come outside of ourselves, and not be selfish in that manner, and really think and care, especially when it comes to children.
Yeah.
Jen, did you want to? Oh, Pam, you want to say something?
No, go ahead, Jen. That's fine.
No, I do love my boundaries. I do love talking about boundaries and how important they are. Teachers are in a really unique position to bear witness to this, but also to be involved. Pam, how do you, do you get any sort of training beforehand, or is this kind of like trial by fire where, this is happening in real time, we have to figure out what we're going to do to help this child because it's happening right in front of us and we have to do something?
Again, I am really blessed where he has planted me to work. We are a trauma responsive school.
Wow.
We are a trauma responsive school. We have a lot of professional developments pertaining to incidences just like that. We are mandated reporters. Like I said, we have social emotional learning that is integrated all throughout the school. We're a responsive classroom school, so that we have certain teacher language that we use, signals, so we try to create that learning environment with less stress as possible. I don't have to raise my voice to get your attention, that type of thing. So we just try to create that environment for the student to be as stress-free as possible. But to answer your question, yes, we do receive training. We do have professional development training. We have people come in. We have articles that we need to read. We just did a lesson on active shooters. Mm-hmm. So we take it very seriously, and we take the lives of our children very seriously. And to pay attention to our children, to get to know them. There is nothing cookie cutter about education anymore.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, I've never actually heard. I'm not involved in the education sector at all, so forgive my ignorance, but I've never heard of a trauma response school. That's very interesting to me. Is that common?
I'm going to say no. In my conversations with some of my friends who are in education, this is not a conversation that normally comes up. One of my children is actually in education, so we have some interesting conversations. They have what they call climate control. But to me, that is reactive.
Yeah.
And not necessarily proactive.
Yeah.
So our school, I would say, is more proactive in that we've put certain things in place to help guide the children along in terms of resolving issues or knowing that they have a place to go to or person to go to if they find themselves in some adverse situation. Now, not every child is going to share no. But I do, especially with the teens, there are a couple of staff members that they will actually go to and talk to. And then based on what we've been trained in and taught, they can go ahead and implement that. And then if that staff member needs to go talk to our counselor to get additional information or get them to get in with her so that she can sit and have these conversations, that's kind of how it starts. It's like we all are interconnected. It's not, I have this conversation, it's just me. No, it's the bottom line is, what can we do to best serve this child so that they can be that productive person and fulfill what they are being called to do, whatever that is. Yeah. Right. So,
man, I wish that there wasn't a need for that, right? Like, you wish that school could just be school. But thank God that it's not, and because there is a need for it, thank God that there is schools like yours and people like you and your colleagues that are noticing the position that you're in as educators and as people that are really walking through life on an intimate level with these families, to hopefully kind of mitigate those traumatic events in their lives. So that's awesome.
Well, I would say, please forgive my ignorance as well, because before this evening, I never heard of a trauma responsive school. I know that teachers are mandated reporters. I know that schools go through, even, my third graders school, they go through fire safety. They do have active shooter safety. They practice lockdowns and shutdowns, but I've never heard of a trauma responsive school. And to me, that sounds like it's a major part of curriculum where it's in place and should be, as well it should be, to really care for students in this way. I mean, social and emotional learning, until I had contact with you, I never heard of that. And especially with the babies, kindergartners, elementary school, I'd never heard of that being in place, which again, should be, I believe is necessary, and I believe it's an awesome thing. I mean, even when you said, there's a language among the teachers, for you to be able to speak to each other in a way and alert each other, I think that's an awesome thing. And it should be something that is not rare. I wish it was something that I'm not just hearing for it the first time. Right. Yeah. A surprise, a good surprise, but, it should be more common. I mean, because of what we're dealing with, domestic violence touches so many homes. There is no way that you can forget about the children. I mean, children, they do see, they do hear, they sense, they feel, they hear the whispers and the quiet voices. They hear the crying and sobbing. They hear the loud fighting and the arguments and the furniture crashing. And then the poor babies have to get up and go to school the next day with all of that. And then they have to make it, through their day. And I speak to adults, and I tell them when you have a child in front of you, when you're dealing with issues in school, you can't just say, this kid has a learning disorder. This kid just likes to fight. And then you send them out the classroom. You send them to the principal. They're expelled. No, there may be some things happening in that child's home. Maybe that child didn't eat dinner last night. Maybe they didn't have breakfast this morning. Maybe they won't eat when they get home. But there are some things that happen in a child's life, and the younger they are, the harder it is for them to be able to communicate. I mean, we have teenagers that can't communicate, that cannot express to you, I'm hurting right now, I'm confused right now, some things are happening at home, some things are happening with me, and they don't know how to put words to it, so they get into a fight. So they don't pay attention in class. So, they're disruptive. But I think we just can't continue to chalk up behavior and say, that it's just a problem child. No, that child is probably having a problem, and we need to care enough to get down to the bottom of it.
It's very true. I have one other student, which it was brought to my attention that, COVID required a lot of us to hover together for a minute there, right? And I'll speak on that in kind of two levels, but in this particular child's instance, we're back to school now, and we still mask up, especially with the RSV virus, whatever that is, being rampant right now. But now that that's happened, he is no longer with his siblings like that. And the siblings attend the school, but because of schedules, they don't really get to connect. And it has been, and everything else is going on behind the scenes with that, but it's been emotionally a toll on him. Sometimes he's like this, and then sometimes he just shuts down. And then recognizing, helping him to mature. Okay, well, I can't necessarily always give you what you want, okay, because that's not helping you either. Mm-hmm. But it is okay. I have two designated people that he will actually talk to. So if I'm teaching a class, I can call that one person in. They'll take him outside. They'll go for a walk. I have a little heart in my classroom. They can hold it if they need to hold a heart, close to their heart. Or I have my prayer bear in the room. So if they need to hold prayer bear for a little bit, they can hold prayer bear for a little bit. But, just all these different things to get them to open up and then help give them vocabulary to put to whatever it is that they're feeling so they can be able to, talk through that. So yes, those are just some of the things that, it's hard when they're so little like that because they really don't know what to say. And I had another student when we were dealing with COVID and we were virtual, talk about the anxiety that these young babies were undergoing. And so our guidance counselor, she had her work cut out for her. I mean, it wasn't just the little ones. It was the older ones. They were, they were afraid. Plus the things that they had to endure while they were at home, the things that they had to see while they were trying to be in class. It was a lot, and it was a lot to work through when we actually came back to school. It was a lot to work through when we came back to school. So again, this is why we had to take the posture, I believe, the way that we did in terms of girding ourselves up with professional development techniques and understanding in terms of being able to communicate effectively to our students and also to help them social and emotionally. So like for kindergarten, we're learning about the skills for learning. They're learning about conflict resolution. How do you resolve a conflict when you have a problem? What do we do? Learning how to share properly, creating alternatives. Okay, I may want this toy, but you know what? The teacher's setting a timer for a few minutes. I know I'm going to get my turn. So it's learning how to navigate, negotiate, how to talk, and then even being assertive. Not running to me all the time and telling me that so-and-so hit me or so-and-so said something to me. I need you to be assertive and let that person know that you did not like what they told you. You did not like what they said, You don't have to be mean about it, but just say, you know what, I don't really like you calling me that. I would appreciate if you called me by my name or whatever. So it's like teaching them early on those boundaries that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Teaching them early on that you have a right to have this boundary, the autonomy. You have a right to say, no, I do not want you grabbing me by my arm like that. You have that right to say that, and letting them know that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
You know, I keep thinking about how I felt how out of control I felt when I came home after leaving my situation, and how much grace was bestowed upon me because people knew like what I was going through, even if they didn't know the details. And so I just keep thinking about how much compassion we need. Like, if we can have that much compassion for adults, we need to have 10 times more for children.
Yes.
Who are trying to navigate a situation that they didn't choose to be in, and they in no way put themselves there. And they already have no control, very little control in their lives. And then to be in these situations. And I just remember like some of the stuff I did when I was in a really dark place, just like really, not anything that I would do now from a healed place, but, and so, yeah, like to really just view children with an understanding of, we have no idea what they're going through and they're still people, and to be able to respond to them in a way that is compassionate and understanding, and not just thinking, like you have both said, oh, you're a bad kid. Mm-hmm. No, there's a reason that, you're acting the way you are. What is that reason? And what can we do to help you? Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe we need some more compassion for younger people.
Yeah.
From babies up, it runs the gamut there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you, Minister Pam, I'm going to find a heart. I am going to find a plushie that I can hold on to, because that is just that's beautiful. It's just, I can just imagine and believe that the children that are under your tutelage right now, that they will be able to grow and move through their stages in a healthy way because of the patterns that you and your fellow colleagues are setting. And that's just, it's just a beautiful thing. And it also made me think, it seems that you, your colleague, your school, you're very well prepared in dealing with the children and issues of trauma, being a trauma responsive school. Do you have, I guess, lessons that would be on an equal level for the parents as well? Or do you completely focus on the children? So, for instance, the example that you gave earlier, when you were able to speak to the parent of the child, was the school able to help and guide the parent, as you are the child?
Mm-hmm. So our guidance counselor, I don't know how she does it. I really don't. We're not a big school, but oh my goodness, this woman clocks some steps. She really does, but she's graced for it, without a doubt. She's graced for it. So yes, what she'll do is, as teachers, we present her with situations, and especially if the parents open up to us, a lot of times I'll say to the parent, listen, we have this person on campus who has a great wealth of resources. Would you mind if I refer you? So I'm not just going to share information like that. I'll usually ask if it's okay if I share email so that they can begin their conversations. So normally what she does is she has information herself that she will share with a parent. Matter of fact, I took her some from our domestic violence awareness conference the other day. I grabbed some brochures and I handed them to her so she could have them in her office.
Awesome.
And she was very appreciative. She really was. But yes, she will talk to the parent as well. We have a couple of organizations that we do partner with now. So depending on the event that the family is going through, the trauma that the family is going through, she may be able to send them to one of the partners to help them to get more help specifically for their particular situation.
Awesome. Luv Bay, we want to take a moment to welcome you again to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern with the replay on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Also Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. We have to share with you the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline. Their website is loveisrespect.org. Their phone number is 1-866-331-9474. We have the Polaris Project, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Their number is 1-888-373-7888. Or you can text the words Be Free, BEFREE. You can text the words Be Free to the number 233-733. And their website is polarisproject.org. And Polaris is POLARIS. And then we have in the United States the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their website is www.thehotline.org. And their phone number is 1-800-799-7233. And I just want to give credit again for the article that we shared, how witnessing domestic violence affects children. Again, it was written by Elizabeth Plumtree, published November 17th, 2021, and the article can be found on verywellmind.com. So Pam and Jen, as we were thinking about children, one of the thoughts that came to my mind is that children are vulnerable. Children are absolutely vulnerable. But it seems that, I guess unless you're actually working with children, we never think of children growing up. We never think of them moving from, being that 5-year-old to one day, this is going to be a 45-year-old. I guess it's like we just enshrine them in that age where they are, and I mean, I minister to men specifically, even today, who witness their mothers being abused, and they grapple with the fact that they were not physically able to help their mothers or defend their mothers. They grapple with not being able to protect her, even though they were just a child. At 5 years old, 8 years old, 10 or 12 years old. I mean, grown men stand in front of me and break down in tears because of what they could not do when they were a toddler. But those who abuse, and even those who are being abused, never think of that child growing up. You never think of that child becoming a 33-year-old who can't function properly because he or she remembers the glass breaking, the furniture breaking. And I mean, it just made me think how children do normalize abuse. They become immune to it because their childhoods presented as normal behavior, or their childhoods happen in such a manner that they have no control. There's nothing that, you can do. And they just suffer. And it's just so horrible, and even to the person who is being abusive or doing the wrong. They never think of that person coming out of it. Never think of, this person that I'm hurting one day being out of this, or one day growing up and seeing, the other side. For me as a child, a teenager, for a bit, I lived with one of my grandmothers. And for me, being in that house was abusive. My grandmother was abusive. My aunt was abusive towards me. Her children were abusive towards me. Well, I was a kid. There was nothing that I could do. I was 14. I was 15 years old. But when I became an adult, I remember actually seeing my aunt. I hadn't seen her for years. And I just so happened to see her one day. I was in my late 20s. And I saw her, and I just looked at her, and something came over me. Like, the first thing that came to my mind was, I'm not 14 anymore. And it's like she was surprised to see me, and it was like, I didn't say anything. I was able to control myself enough to not actually say what I wanted to say, not actually do what I wanted to do. But it was like, you never think of that kid growing up, and what, they have to deal with and what they have to work through. Because I had to work through some stuff, behind what my family did. And we just have to I think, Jen, you said it earlier, be compassionate, show compassion. And again, anybody who hurts someone, you're hurting someone because you're hurting. So get the help that you need for yourself, to not inflict that, especially on a child. And children are so eager. They are eager. They are open. Their minds are open. And they have such an innocence and a willingness to learn. I mean, it is just such a beautiful thing to see a child and children, how they just run around and play, and they can just take everything in. They truly are willing to learn. And as a matter of fact, they definitely will learn something, but it's up to us. It's up to adults to teach them the correct behaviors and the correct responses, as you and your colleagues are doing. I think I just want to ask you, from your point of view, it really is like having clay in your hands when you're dealing with children. You really can mold them and shape them. And on one hand, that's an absolute beautiful thing. When it's the right information coming down, when the right actions and the right behaviors are coming down. But for that to just fall into, the wrong hands and babies dealing with trauma that they should on no level know anything about, it's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. It is, we only have them so many hours during the day, I mean, you have some children who do come from before and after care, so I guess that is a long day for them as well. But when you look at the scope of things, we really don't have them for a long period of time. So it is very important to me that the environment that they are in is a special type of environment. The school was kind enough to help me do some things in the classroom, so it's brighter. I make sure that it's like cleaned up every day. Display all of their work. So it's like just creating a environment that they want to come to every day. And it's like they know that they can come. They know that they can get breakfast in the morning. And I even have a couple of children who run late. I'll grab their breakfast and I'll bring it to the classroom. But you just know that there are just certain elements that are just really very important, that they need the stability, they need the consistency so that they can get through their day. And if they can't count on it anywhere else, they know that they can count on it here. And that's what's really important to me. The fact that I can still remember and see my kindergarten teacher's face.
Yes.
At my age.
Yes.
that says something. So just know that, like you were saying, Jan, about that compassion, that wherever the opportunity presents itself, that allows us to be in that environment where we can show that compassion, give that to them. For them, that is memorable. They will remember that, and, as we, we continue to like speak over them, give them those opportunities to learn how to express themselves, give them the vocabulary so that they can turn those internal feelings into words and get them out instead of keeping them in, just creating all of these different paths for them will just help to mold them. And even though they may face the adversity or go through those trials, it's like you've given them tools. You've given them tools to think about, to at least make a better choice in terms of how they want to approach things that they come up against. But it's very important that those pieces are in place and that they know that they can count on that, and that your caring for them is unconditional, right? Mm-hmm. So if they come in with an attitude, something's wrong, I may have to tell them to take a break for a moment, count to 30, and then when you're ready, you come back and you can talk. Okay, we can do that. But the thing is that, they just know that there is a way. There is another way, and that there is someone who really cares and someone really wants to hear what it is that they are going through. Their voice is not, they're not invisible. Yeah. They have a voice. I tell them that all the time. You have a voice. I want to hear what you have to say. Now, how you say it, that's what we're going to work on. But you have a voice.
That is absolutely beautiful. So I want to ask you, and then Jen, I'll turn it over to you for a question or comment. But since you are a trauma responsive school, I wanted to ask, is there any support or any type of system set up for you, for the teachers, I guess, to support each other as you're dealing with the trauma that comes in with the children? Because I could just imagine some of the stories or situations that may happen. So is there something already prepared for the teachers to be able to decompress or just share with each other, or, just make it through? Because I know that there are moments when you're helping someone, and especially if you're dealing with children, where you may need to just, take a break, and just be able to just have a moment to get yourself together. So is there something set up for you guys, specifically as the ones who are dealing with the trauma?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, we're a small school, and we're a pretty tight-knit group. Like I said, I'm just really blessed right now. But we can, of course, we have our counselor that we can go to, and she'll come and she'll do a temperature check with us. And she'll say, nice. Are you doing okay? Hey, did you eat lunch today? And I'll say the same thing to her, or with break, like the other day, one of my coworkers, her class wasn't in there, and I was on, my guys were at lunch, walked in, hey, how you doing? And she shared something with me, and next thing you know, we're just like praising the Lord together, and just thanking God, and just praying in agreement on, certain things. So there are different pockets and different times where we can actually come together or seek one another out for that moment of restoration or that moment of support. It's definitely there. We have a dean of students, and I have an assistant. So if I need to step out the room for a second, I can call up and say, listen, can I get 5 minutes? and, or on my walkie, can someone come to, my module for like 5 minutes just so I can, leave out for a moment and get a breath and then, and come back in. So the systems are in place to help us.
That is awesome. Jen, do you have a question or comment?
That is awesome. Real quick, we've thrown around the term a couple of times, and I just kind of want to explain it for people that may not be aware. Can you explain what a mandated reporter is and the functions of that?
Okay, mandated reporter. Mandated reporter is a person, especially in education, that if we observe any type of behavior, or if we see the presentation of any form of abuse, physical abuse, if we witness the physical abuse, be it verbal or physical, we are mandated, we are required to call a hotline to actually report it. So that's basically what a mandated reporter does. If we witness, hear, or if the student shares with me something that that is tied into any kind of physical, verbal, emotional abuse, I'm required to report it.
Yeah. I just wanted to explain that, and I'm going to go even a little deeper because I want people to understand how serious this job is as a mandated reporter. And at least that's how it is where we are. I don't know about other places, but where we are, there are certain people in certain professions that are mandated reporters. And yes, as Pam said, if you witness or are given information about abuse happening to a child, you have to report that it's happening. If you don't report it and it comes back that you witnessed it and didn't report it, you can go to jail. So just to, like, let's just add another layer of stress and things that educators are under here. I mean, it's great that the system is in place because we do need people that are looking out for children, obviously. But it's not a suggestion. It is a mandate, and it gets complicated. A parent might tell you something and they think that they're talking to you in confidence, and they don't realize that you're a mandated reporter and you have to turn around and then go report that. So it really is something that, we put a lot on educators, and everything that you've said today, Pam, is wonderful. I'm so glad to hear about your school and what, the steps that you're taking to just make sure that trauma is being taken care of, and treating it as something that you are prepared to encounter because you know the probability of it. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to go into that a little bit because it is a very serious thing that you have to do and you have to be aware of, and it doesn't always make you the popular person.
Right.
Nope.
So yeah.
No, it doesn't. And it's just like we had our norms. We just had our report card conferences, and I had to give them norms. Okay, this is how we're going to operate this particular our conference. We're going to be solution oriented, respectful in terms of our words and things like that. So you already know that we're setting these norms. So when a parent is bringing their child to our school, these are our norms. This is how we operate. So you just need to understand who we are, what it is that we do. And if it's something that you're not comfortable with, then you may want to reconsider enrolling your student in our school, So,
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Reading is fundamental.
Hello.
So it was just yesterday that I actually had a meeting with some colleagues. We work with we're all advocates and supporters of victims and survivors of domestic violence. And the question was posed to the group: what do you do if you go into a church of any faith, but what do you do if you go into a church and you're trying to bring in help for domestic violence related situations, and the pastor, the preach, the lead clergy person, whatever it is, if they're telling you, no, this problem does not exist in my congregation? So the question was, what do you do when you meet that? And so I gave my answer. Now, it could be, I know that I'm a mandated reporter because, I'm a minister. But, my answer was, you stand flat-footed and you tell the pastor, the priest, whomever you're standing in front of, this is an issue. It needs to be addressed. And this person who came to me, or this person who I know needs help, will get this information that I am going to give to them. It's not an easy thing. Some of us, depending on what church you're in, you stand up, you let your voice be heard. You could lose your credentials. Your credentials could be taken away from you. That is something that I am willing to put on the table. You can take my license. You can do whatever. But I am still going to stand on the side of this man or this woman or this child who needs help. And I will do my very best to get help to this individual or to these people. So it's not an easy thing when you're in a position trying to bring help and trying to bring awareness. And there is an added layer of responsibility and accountability when you fall under I want to say that when you fall under one who is a mandated reporter. Basically, do your job. And that's it. Bottom line, again, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that you won't get pushback. But I think if you don't take the risk to stand up for this child, if you don't take the risk to stand up for this vulnerable person, who's going to do it? When will the abuse stop? I refuse to let a man, a woman, or child be sent back into a situation that could kill them, that could end their life because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or I didn't say what I was supposed to say. I didn't share the information that I was supposed to hear. That's not going to be on me. And so in my doing what I'm supposed to do, if part of that is having a conversation with whomever that conversation needs to be had with, I'm going to do that. You can receive what I say or not. You can receive this information or not. But whatever needs to be done will be done. So if I'm talking to police officers, if I'm talking to social workers, if I'm talking to counselors, if I'm talking to doctors, it will happen. And for me, it's the right thing to do. It's the necessary thing to do. And somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it. And you think, we're talking about children right now. Who is going to stand up for our children? Who is going to help the child who cannot clearly communicate what they're thinking and what they're feeling? We can't just, we cannot just leave them out, swinging in the wind. And I also want to say that, we deal heavily with domestic violence, but trauma covers several different areas, several topics. Trauma definitely is in domestic violence. Trauma is in sexual assault. It is in rape. Trauma is in hunger. It is in poverty. It's not having a home to live in, homelessness. Trauma deals with drugs and alcohol, addictions in that way. And when you think and when you look, when you see these addictions, these area of trauma can ravage the life of an adult, think of what it does to our children. We have to step in and do what needs to be done. Not that we have all the answers, Because I'm telling you, there are times that, all I can do is maybe bring a situation to your attention, and maybe there's nothing else that I can do after that. But if my part was to be the one to say, this is happening and something needs to be done about it, then I'm going to do my part. And then prayerfully, the next person behind me will step up and do their part, and the process keeps going. But somebody has to do it. We cannot leave our children just, again, swinging in the wind. And it bothers me to no end when I hear people describe children and they just say, he's just bad. She's a bad girl. She has an attitude. This is a nasty child. They're just, no. Did you find out why? Did you try?
Right.
Did you sit with them? And if you couldn't do it yourself, did you try to get some help for someone who may be trained to deal with children? Because like there are different, types of counselors, everyone can't deal with a child. Now, I understand that. So what did you do to get the right person sitting in front of this child to help them? Don't just chalk it up and throw them aside.
One of the things that we have had a discussion about is the importance of pre-service. So before a teacher goes into a community or a school, to me, you can't just walk into a school in Chinatown and think you're going to teach in this area and you don't know anything about the community.
Yes.
You don't know anything about their culture. You don't know anything about, how families interact with one another. You don't understand these things. You don't know these things. So it would be very easy for you to go in there with a judgmental eye and say, well, this child is doing X, Y, and Z. But you have no idea that this is part of their culture. That in some cultures, women do not look men directly in the eyes. So if a child is not looking you, how we'll say, look me in my eyes, but you've been taught not to do that. What? Right. So, right now as educators going in, it is not going to be, like I said, cookie cutter. There's so many other things that you have to be willing to embrace to be that educator, to be that effective educator. You have to be willing to build relationships. You have to be willing to build relationships on all levels. Little people, they still have their little trust issues. Of course they do. But now we're talking middle schoolers. You have to be willing to build a relationship. And sometimes you do have to meet them where they are. You have to meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
So you can understand, like you said, what is actually going on behind closed doors. And not that you have to know everything, but you know that there's enough going on that is causing them to present these certain behaviors, or they're going through these emotions. So anybody who's stepping in education right now, you have to have a different kind of lens.
Yes.
You have to have a different kind of lens, for sure.
So, Pam, with that, I would just ask you just to go ahead and close us out for tonight with final words. And I want to especially just say thank you to the educators on tonight who take their job seriously, who take the lives of our children seriously. I say thank you. And so, Pam, I'm going to ask you to close us out with final words.
Let's see. As my mom calls myself and my brother, even at our age, she calls us precious little bumps. And she always asks me, she said, how are your precious little bumps in class? Children are a gift. For the most part, some of them were not asked to be here, but they're here. And it is just so important that we just take the time to appreciate them for who they are, for where they are, and to help them the best way that we can, to help place them on the path so that they can grow up to fulfill their purpose. We all have a purpose. They have a purpose. And, you know, so early on, so many adversities and things come to try to steal their voice, steal their identity, steal their purpose. And we just have to be advocates for them. So whenever you find yourself in the environment of working with young children, young people, just take the time to find out just how special they are. And a lot of times you can be surprised what they say and how much they can bless you with who they are and what they know. But just to take the time to love on them and to pour into them. Because after all, it's not a cliche. They are our future.
Yes.
And we need them to be in position to do what they're called to do. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Luv Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. Thank you for joining Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia. Thank you to my co-host, Jen Peterkin, for joining us on tonight. We are here on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Good evening.